Greetings, everybody. Welcome back into Mining Stock Daily. This is going to be a little bit of a market update and analysis with a returning guest, but someone we haven't heard from in quite some time. He is the author over at Junior Stock Review, and his name is Mr. Brian Leni. Brian, welcome back to the pod. How you been?
Hey, Trevor. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You've had a busy summer, it sounds like. You have been traveling quite a bit and a number of site visits.
Yeah, no, it's been a really busy summer, especially after the last few years with COVID and such. I think this was my first year to get back out into the field and start visiting projects again. And sort of as you alluded to, like it's also the added bonus for me that I'm filming the site visits, which is definitely new and it adds a whole nuance to the whole experience. But I think it's going to be really good for my subscribers and anybody else who's interested in the sector.
Yeah, well, we'll talk more about this video series that you are working on and going to post to your subscribers. Looking forward to seeing those. Let's get a sense here since you've had your own boots on the ground here. Listen, we know the story behind the markets, what's happening in the junior equities, but we also know that a lot of companies have been very busy despite the markets not behaving themselves. So what are you seeing on the ground there, and how are you kind of balancing out, the technical work versus what the markets are rewarding?
Well, exploration continues to be the focus of the market in terms of recognizing value, and all the attention is being pushed there. Over the last, month or two, we've seen a number of different companies across the spectrum from precious metals to base metals that have made some, pretty significant discoveries. And as such, the market has rewarded them. And I think, with the market that we've had over the last year and a half, it's really nice to see, especially if you're already invested in those companies to begin with. For the others, people are playing catch up and trying to catch that momentum and kind of move with it. And that's never really been my bag. I like to take my time with investments. I definitely follow the new discoveries, but I like to take my time and make sure I fully understand the investment thesis to as full extent as I'm capable of. Some of the mistakes I've made in the past is maybe jumping in a little bit too soon, and especially with management, not having a full idea of who they are and what they're all about, and sort of paying the penalty for that. So I'm a little shy about pulling the trigger too quickly on companies that I don't know about. But 100%, the market is recognizing exploration success, and I think especially for people that are, of that risk profile, exploration is where you probably can make your money, at least in the short term right now.
Yeah, the market is rewarding discoveries, whether they have full assays on those discovery holes or not, it sounds like here, Brian, which is, I guess, maybe the silver lining. It's good to see. It's people, to me at least, that means investors and speculators are still watching and being kind of selective with where they're putting their money. But we have seen a number of companies put out discovery holes and getting rewarded with the market. So I guess it's safe to say that you're not jumping into those. You're not chasing those at all, are you?
No, I'm definitely investigating them. There's some that, I have a threshold, of the different drill holes and what they mean and what I'll actually put time into. There's some stuff right off the hop I know that I'm not interested in, and that usually has to do with the market cap of the company. In a few cases that I can think of, the market caps were already somewhat established, I would say, and people were expecting good things. And so I think the upside to potential is still there, but I'm less intrigued by it. It's more of these companies that are a little more obscure, that have low market caps, let's say below 20 million, they were able to raise some money in that little blip window, I think would basically be the last quarter of 2022 and maybe Q1 of this year, and have sort of put it to work in this first drill season. And but in saying that, it does come with trepidation too, where I'm not apt to just follow the momentum. I do like to have a phone call or two before and make sure I do my due diligence. So yeah.
So where has your focus been in this very volatile and really crummy summer market? Where has your focus turned to, Brian?
You know what? I wouldn't say I necessarily have a direct focus. I'm more apt to look at companies that have, already made a discovery, or maybe just pre 43-101, like an inferred resource, all the way up to maybe PEA, PFS sort of level, where I'll go in and do my own sort of analysis take a phone call, understand what the next steps are, and see if I see the investment thesis in terms of the market going to recognize the value in the company. Across the sector, you're seeing great valuations. And so I don't think you could really go wrong necessarily from that point of view, but it's all the other nuances. It's the management team, of course. It's the share structure. It's the access to cash. And what those catalysts exactly are. Are these guys, is there exploration upside? Are they moving right towards construction? If they are these guys going to construct the project? Or are they looking for that buyout and somebody else more apt at building a project to do that? So that's, honestly, if you look at most of my analysis, probably over the last 3 or 4 months, that's where I've spent more of my time. My tables for comparison are full of what I would deem maybe more developers that have exploration upside, and comparing them, and also trying to figure out exactly what I'm looking for in this market. Because like I said, you've got a lot of choice. And sometimes with most people, myself included, when you have too much choice, unless you're very clear with yourself on what you want, you end up doing nothing. And in some cases that it wasn't bad. Like last year, the market wasn't recognizing value for just about anything. Everything was a liquidity event, and maybe that saved you. But I think moving forward, I think we're kind of stepping closer to that change in the market for a number of different reasons. And so I would like to make some decisions here, and it's coming up with that criteria that sort of fits what I'm looking for.
If we do get a reversal in this market, do you think it will be more macro focused? Like, do you think it will come with a rising gold price based on something that happens in the global economy? Or do you just think maybe it's just sentiment changing because it's just been in the gutter for so long, Brian?
That's a great question. And I'm not sure I can fully answer you, because I can sort of see it in both ends. I would say that in one instance, you could see that the market might need a spike in something like the gold price, but it's hard to see that without some macro event happening. Whether that's a crash in the market, maybe it's war, maybe it's a number of other things, which would be terrible. But invariably, gold usually responds in those types of situations. The other side, we're talking, the things are so blown out, when you get so low, you seemingly just build off those bottoms because you've exhausted the sellers, and really you're left with, the diehards that see the value, they see how the company is going to incrementally move forward. And I think in those instances that itself, could build on itself, but maybe it takes even a little bit longer than many people would like. And so if I had to push to one side, I would say probably, unfortunately, it's going to be a macro event. And unfortunately, that might be towards the negative instead of the positive.
Yeah. I want to ask you about opportunities here. And given this market that we've had for, the better part of 2 years, you could say almost every corner of exploration and mining could potentially be an opportunity, but it's not one of those things where you can just start throwing darts at a board and taking picks like that. You got to be pretty dang picky. I guess, how do you narrow down where these opportunities lie in this market? And, what are you kind of directing your readers to? What is the best opportunity here if you look at the mine cycle?
So I'll segment my answer into 2 sections. First, I'll say for myself and my readers, really it's going to be directed by what I see in the market and what I think fits best for how I see the market developing forward. And like I said, I also like to play to my strengths. And so those developers with exploration upside and other catalysts to attract attention is definitely where I see the most upside. And I'm particularly attracted to precious metals at this point because of the discrepancy between the metal price and the equity valuations. In the grander sense, in talking about outside and to your listeners, I would say, I think it starts with yourself, and you need to be introspective and say, okay, what's my risk profile? After you've established that, am I on the high end, am the low end, kind of in the middle? Then you can sort of narrow down what type of company you're going to look at. From there, maybe you're attracted to a particular metal in its investment thesis, whether that's precious metals, maybe it's lithium or one of the battery metals. And if you've got an interest, obviously I would suggest you do some more reading on it, form an opinion. And then if it does coincide and you want to take a dip into the equities, then you go with it. But it starts with yourself and sort of, self-directed into what you're looking for. Because I think too often people will hear somebody speak and say, oh, you know what, that company sounds great, but they haven't taken any time to see if exploration really is their bag. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people have to lose money, especially in those high risk things, to understand you like, hey, you know what, maybe losing half my money or all of my money in the span of 6 months because they missed drill results isn't what I'm looking for. And so often for me, I think, a big part of being successful in the junior sector is lasting and making your money last for those up cycles where, it's a tide that does indeed sort of rise all boats. And so you have more probability of being right. But I think it starts with yourself. And I think for most people, that's where they need to begin.
Brian, let's talk about this video series you're going to put out. Would love to get a sense of exactly what viewers are going to be seeing, whether maybe you can mention specific companies and site visits you went on, and really, what is the general premise of this series that you're going to try to get across to those viewers?
Sure. I think, for me, I'm definitely privileged in being able to go on these site visits. The fact is, not every investor out there is going to be able to go visit the companies they're invested in. And that's unfortunate, but it's just not feasible when you think about it, for everybody to get to do it. So I think first and foremost, this is a way for me to especially give back to my readers and the people that have, supported me through, this journey of being a resource sector investor, and bringing them to site with me in the companies that I'm invested in or potentially going to be invested in, and seeing why, seeing the company for, what their value is, getting to know those people that are running the company, which is probably the most important. And I'll try to convey that and show the investors what these people are like. And that's what I want them to retain. And not only that, it's, being able to physically go to site and visit it. You see the topography, you see the impacts to any potential creeks or wildlife in the area. And it gives you a chance, or me a chance, to talk to the locals. I was just in central BC to see FPX's Dakar. And, for some of your viewers that are familiar with FPX, you'll know a few weeks ago, there was some news release and some news surrounding relationship with First Nations. And there seems to be some question marks there. And so for me, the site visit coincided the week after that was released. And so it was kind of, it was great for me to go to site, to stay in Fort St. James, which is basically the hub for FPX when they're doing work at Dakar, and, kind of gauge people's feeling on mining in general, and then maybe even specifically with FPX. And again, that's something that you can't do from a desktop. And so I want to bring to the viewers. Along with the site visit videos, a big impact in my life, and continues to be, is the impact of mentors. And I'll preface this with the fact that, especially when you go further back in my investing career, I didn't know any of these guys. I didn't know the Rick Rules. I didn't know any of them. But, a few of their messages definitely resonated with me. And for maybe my personality type and the way that I am, I was able to incorporate some of their kind of isms or rules into my investment process. And it's been to my success. And unfortunately, for me, I haven't been able to encapsulate all of it. I've had to make some of my own mistakes. And I think that's also something I want to convey. So you have site visit videos, and then you're also going to have some interviews with some people that I really respect, mentors, or what you would maybe deem as, successful investors in this sector. And those are going to be sort of one-on-one in-person things, and they're going to be meaningful to me. In the first episode, a guy that I always make sure I listen to and have tremendous respect for, Dave Lotan. We sat together in Toronto and had a one-on-one, and that'll coincide with the release of episode 1 in the next week or so.
Great. Awesome. Well, I look forward to, I'll be seeing Dave probably next week as well. So I'll have to ask him how the interview process went with you, Brian. I hope you weren't too hard on him. He can be kind of a pushover sometimes. Just kidding, Dave. Brian, so when do we get to first get eyeballs on these things?
Sure. So I think we actually, the filming process is quite interesting, and it's a learning experience for me.
Yes.
I'm doing the storyboards and kind of working through it. So I did the interview with Dave, and we shot the first scenes for episode 1 back at the end of July. and sort of how things have gone, there were some holes. And that's, it seems like that's just how it goes. So we actually just shot the last portion of episode 1 last week. And from what the editor was telling me, he said maybe next week there should be episode 1 and then the interview with Dave ready for publishing. So I'm quite excited. And then that'll be followed at the end of the month with the Dakar, the FPX nickel episode. And again, I'm super excited. FPX has been a company I've been invested in with, the better part of 5 or 6 years. And this has brought it full circle to me, even though Martin corrects me. He said, really full circle for your investment is us getting bought out or acquired in some manner. And that's very true. But again, going to site is a kind of a culmination of the investment process, or a confirmation of everything that you think and indeed it was.
Brian, I know video work is a ton of work. I know this because I used to work in video in a prior life, and so thanks so much for putting a lot of your time and attention into it. I look forward to seeing those first couple episodes and seeing how you conduct those interviews. It's going to be a lot of fun. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on and sharing some of your time with us today.
My pleasure, Trevor. Thank you very much for having me.